But first, we've finally been told today it's 6 weeks until we vote on whether to now divide Australians by race. The Prime Minister...
Today I announce that referendum day will be the 14th of October.
The Prime Minister today announced that date in Adelaide at a Labor campaign launch, where he was twice welcomed to the country he was actually born in, although it sounded at times more like a New Age ritual than an age-old one.
Because that wind, that's how the old people come, and that's when they tell us what to do.
And I have to say, Albanese's pitch for the Voice today seemed shrill, and the applause half-hearted, like the people there knew their push was in strife.
In recognition of 65,000 years of history, vote yes. With hope for a better future, vote yes. Vote yes on October 14. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to tell you in a second just why this Voice campaign should be in strife. I mean, looking at the man there at today's launch was a living example of exactly why it will fail.
The man who was in this room today, Mr. Noel Pearson.
Now, before I get to Pearson, the sort of father of this Voice, here is why the crowd there did sound a bit flat. This is a referendum to change the Constitution, your Constitution, to include the Voice, a kind of advisory parliament just for Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders, and to give it power backed by our judges to make representations to not just federal politicians but public servants and institutions, including our army or the Reserve Bank. And to make this change, the Yes campaign must win first a majority of votes nationally, of course, but second, a majority of votes in most states, 4 states. Now, if it wins in only 3, this Voice will be beaten. And here are the results of the latest news poll. The Yes vote is actually behind in the national vote, and it's ahead in only 2 states, New South Wales and South Australia. And even in Victoria, it's even. So, it looks cooked. But warning, big business has given the Yes campaign so much money that it's got a war chest of between $50 and $100 million. That is massive. It's enough to pay for non-stop advertising until the election or the vote, and for an army of door knockers who are coming for you, by the way, backed by their corporate paymasters.
I say to all those volunteers, keep knocking on doors, keep making calls, keep having those conversations with your colleagues in workplaces across the land, because this change is supported by employers and unions alike.
The Voice, here's a warning why it will be a disaster. First, here's what the Prime Minister today claimed it would do.
Bring our country together and to change it for the better. To vote for recognition, listening and better results, so that we can get better results for Indigenous Australians.
Now, first of all, the Yes idea that we will be united by being separated by race is clearly madness. But in the audience was a man who is proof that this Voice will be a disaster on the Prime Minister's own terms, Noel Pearson. Now, no one has done more than Noel Pearson to create this Voice. He co-wrote and signed the Uluru Statement calling for the Voice. He convinced naive Conservatives such as the Liberals Julie and Lisa to back it, and was on the government's co-design group which actually designed it and is out there pushing it. Second, no one has done more than Noel Pearson to prove that, oh dear, the Voice is racist, it's useless, it's divisive and based on false hopes. Indeed, Pearson was once dead against dividing us by race like this. He said, racial categorisations dehumanise us all. As we said a decade ago, we are each individuals and should be judged as individuals. Race should not matter, which is exactly my argument against the Voice today. But Pearson, at least, is embarrassed enough to insist is now not really, hasn't flipped, is not now really arguing for racism in our constitution. It's about indigeneity instead. Big difference.
This is not about race. This is about people having an original connection with the soil.
But I say, who of us isn't now Indigenous as well? I mean, if we're born here, if we buried our parents in this soil, we're Indigenous too, in my view. And Pearson's actually admitted I'm right.
That is the essence, Kerry, of indigeneity. I had to come to the somewhat uncomfortable conclusion that even Andrew Bolt was becoming Indigenous. Because the bones of his ancestors are now becoming part of the territory.
Noel was right and the Peanuts horse laughing were wrong. But Noel, if we really are all of us becoming Indigenous Australians, and for centuries to come, why do we need this voice? If it really is just for the Indigenous. But it's not, it's about race. But let's go to Albanese's second argument, the one that some people still seem to go for, that we need this voice so Aborigines can tell us what to do, as if they're not doing that already, and so we make better decisions on how to spend the more than $30 billion a year that we already spend on Aborigines. And again, a warning, Noel Pearson. You see, I doubt any Aboriginal leader has had more politicians listening to them more often and obeying them more often than Noel Pearson. Pearson founded something called the Cape York Partnership. It's an organisation promoting the development for just 3,700 Aborigines in the northern tip of Queensland. And what good has it done? Now, Warren Entsch, the federal politician whose electorate includes towns like Arakan and Coen, where Pearson's Cape York Partnership works, summed it all up in a speech in Parliament in May.
But I, like many others in Cape York who have seen the reality of his influence, have long been critical of governments and bureaucrats that only care to listen for his voice. With great difficulty, I've been able to ascertain that since 2005, Noel's accumulated something like $550 million of Australian taxpayers' money, and that's only what I can find, and subsidies for his entities and his policy initiatives. I asked the question, is the value for money? And in my view, it's always been a ruse.
$550 million? I mean, if just say 350 million of that, it had gone straight to the Aborigines of Cape York. Every man, woman and child there would have got almost $100,000, plus all the other government funding. But where's it all gone? I mean, I looked at the 2021 census results today for Arakan. That's the biggest of the four towns in Pearson's partnership. It's still just the welfare ghetto. I mean, of the people there, 89% Aboriginal, 1/3 dropped out of school before year 10. Just 1/3, including the whites, are in the workforce. Unemployment, though, is still 17%. Not a single person owns their own home. And the average family income is less than half the Queensland average. And then, not counted, is the terrible interclan violence there, attacks also on police. And all this is despite politicians doing just what the voice is meant to make them do, right? Listening to Aboriginal activists like Pearson, which they do already. And of course, makes them treat Aborigines as a race apart, living apart, needing even their own advisory parliament. And then, of course, a treaty. All this has already been tried, people. In my opinion, the voice is going to do exactly the same as the Pearson experiment, but on steroids. So be warned. Look at Pearson, father of the voice, and vote no, because our future must be together, not apart.